Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast. I'm here with Harry Ching, and Harry is about 170 characters or so approximately into the Mandarin Blueprint method. So we thought this is a good time to see how it's going so far, see what you think of the course. And we always, of course, want to talk about how the experience is for different people, because everybody's slightly different, but we find that the course tends to work for everybody in some way. They always find something that they get out of it that helps them learn Chinese faster. And so, Harry, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself just in general as a person, and also why you were searching for a Chinese learning method, and how you came across Mandarin Blueprint.
Yeah, so I'm a physician. I'm living in Las Vegas, Nevada right now. I was born in California. So my parents emigrated from Taiwan in the 1970s or so. And in terms of my Chinese journey, all of my friends, I had a lot of Chinese friends growing up. They would all go to Chinese school, pretty much all throughout grade school. And I, for some reason, was able to kind of escape that. Chinese school was always seen as something that wasn't very fun. But over the years, I basically would try to pick up Chinese, just listening to my parents talk to me, things like that. But never really got anywhere in terms of being able to speak. Definitely couldn't read or write anything. So I was probably at a point where I could maybe speak a couple dozen words, but didn't know any characters, didn't know any of that. And as I got older, the desire to learn Chinese actually grew a lot more for various reasons. For example, being able to talk to my girlfriend's parents was a more recent example. They speak both English and Chinese, but I met them for the first time recently and wanted to be able to speak Chinese with them. Being able to talk to patients that only speak Chinese.
Oh yeah, sure.
Which has, I've been able to try to struggle through a little bit of that, but definitely not anywhere near the level I would like to be. But in the future, I think I would really love to, kind of be able to build that patient population. It would, help me serve the Chinese community a lot more. Also just would be great for my practice as well. So those are kinds of some of the motivations, I would say, that led me to the interest. Yeah.
Sure. So you got like a number of layers there. So you have, of course, the connection directly through your parents. And then, of course, if you want to talk, I totally get the feeling, even if your girlfriend's parents speak English, if you can speak to them in Chinese, that will help, with the connection there. And then, of course, hey, if you're literally helping, somebody in a, medical situation, and you want to be able to better communicate with them. I mean, talk about a trifecta of great motivations to get good at it. So that's good. See, when you have the motivation, because one of the things we always try to make sure that people understand is that, it's a map to make sure, Mandarin Blueprint is a map to make sure that you don't take the wrong path, but that doesn't mean that it's not still like a journey. Like, it's not like a magic bullet where you just put a chip in your head and Chinese. But so the motivation is pretty important. If you don't have a strong enough like fire under you, then you won't keep going. But then, obviously those three, those are going to be pretty good motivation moving forward. So talk a little bit about how, you found Mandarin Blueprint, and how you started to sort of, when you were started to see, because at this point we kind of understand what would be your motivation and what you'll do with it when you learn Chinese. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how, when you started with the Mandarin Blueprint method, how it started to either work or not work, or what your experience was as you first got into it.
Yeah, so just, I guess, I stumbled on your guys' post on Reddit a few weeks back, and it just seemed really interesting that you guys were trying to take this new approach to language learning, language acquisition. And I'm all for trying novel methods of learning, because before I found your guys' posts, which by dumb luck, because I don't think I would have found you guys if not for that Reddit post.
Right.
And if I had not just looked at the subreddit that one day or two, you guys were there. But before finding you guys, I had tried, I tried an online course. I tried using apps, a couple of the most popular apps that there are for learning, and I was basically just trying to learn characters through rote memorization, because I kind of realized before I heard you guys talk about it, how important characters are, and how you kind of need to be able to read in order to like fully acquire the language. So I was trying to do this just through writing characters out, which is basically how kids learn, and how I would have learned in Chinese school had I gone to Chinese school. My friends all tried to do it, right? But now they all forgotten how to read, of course.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. The whole writing characters repetitively.
Yeah.
I would forget it a few days later. I would forget characters, and I was thinking to myself, there has to be a better way to do this. And then I saw your post, and I thought that was like really cool.
Yeah. It has to be a user. It really is a use it or lose it thing if you do rote memorization. And I can actually comment on this quite, sort of poignantly at the moment, because I've been in the States for the past 4.5 weeks or so. So I haven't been forced to speak Chinese in day-to-day life, or, I have been reading Chinese just because it's still, I look at my computer and there it is. But still, when it comes to remembering characters, if you use the Mandarin Blueprint method and you don't use it necessarily every day, the recall is way faster, because you have this crazy mnemonic in your head about something, and so it's not like if you don't use it from rote memorization, you're out of the country for a little bit or whatever, there's a high probability that you just completely forget it and have to start it over, which is, that's a bummer. And then it means that you kind of have to be way more resilient and persistent, and that's hard. It's like if you have a good recall mechanism through the mnemonics, then that'll help you. So speaking of the mnemonics, so how now, if we're just talking about a single character, we're not talking about like all of the unlocked words or picking a prop or picking actors or sets, just learning a single character, how long does that take you now, having gone through about 170 characters or so?
Yeah, I would say that for the less complex characters, basically whenever I get to one of those, it's pretty easy for me now to just immediately put my actor and my props into the scene and where they need to be. And then if there's like an immediate obvious scene that I can make, because these days I'm making very simple scenes, because I figured out that that's like you guys have said, keep it simple. I could probably do it in sometimes like 10 to 15 seconds, but sometimes it takes me, up to a minute or two if I need to figure out like, what am I supposed to do with this power line and this couch, and they don't really interact in any logical way, so I just have to make up something kind of ridiculous. But it still works.
It's fun though, because it's kind of like one of the things I always think is so neat about the method is that you end up with this combination of, let's see, 4, usually sometimes 5 random things, and you have to go, okay, well, how would these things interact together? We've got Shaq and a badger and a spoon. What are we going to do? Exactly. So it's kind of fun, and it sounds so ridiculous to people who don't know what the method is, but it's like once you get the hang of it. So what were you skeptical at the beginning when you started watching the videos in level 1, and like, how is this going to make any sense moving forward?
I was probably a little skeptical, honestly. I don't remember exactly what I was thinking. I think I was keeping an open mind, because if it was, because I had a plan before, right around the time that I started the method. I had a plan to pick up the popular Chinese textbooks that people talk about. Mm-hmm. So I was going to try to go through those textbooks if I hadn't found you guys.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, I guess I'll try this other way before I go to the textbook method, because I knew I was very skeptical about the textbook method.
Sure.
I felt like if I went down that path, then I probably would never learn. Yeah. So I was hopeful that you guys had found a good solution.
Yeah. Well, totally. So the skepticism that we sometimes feel is like, well, what's nice is that we've been noticing people recently kind of, it's almost like when there's something that people have tried for years and years, at first they'll be skeptical of a radical different approach. But once something is like, okay, we've been trying this textbook approach for years and years, and people are still not learning Chinese characters, they still are forgetting them, then people's minds will open up a bit more to, all right, let's try something new. Because yeah, it really can be, quite an overwhelming thing. Sometimes people will see it and they'll be like, wait a second, what is this about? But I'm glad to hear that you kept an open mind, because that's the key. So as you moved on, so now, man, that's great about the 10 to 15 seconds thing. I mean, like, or a minute to 2 minutes, like at the long end of it. So now that you've gotten about 170 characters in, have you noticed any impacts on, either your day-to-day life or any communication with your girlfriend or her parents, or with any of your patients or anything like that so far? It's a little early, but
I think that it's actually I am starting to notice an increase in my my spoken vocabulary, because even before I started the method, I was able to speak a few words, but like less than the kindergarten level.
Right.
I don't know, kindergartners probably know a few hundred words, right? So I was probably at the less than 100, something like that. And I'm definitely noticing that pick up, and I'm trying to do as much immersion as possible. So I'm trying to like listen to Chinese in the car whenever possible. Me and my girlfriend, we watch Chinese TV whenever we can, and then I'm starting to pick up things that they say that in the shows, that vocabulary that I'm learning in the blueprint method. So that's been really cool. I'm using like the English subtitles like slightly less maybe. I can definitely feel some progress for sure.
That's great. That's great. So that's like more some things that might have been happening in your life, and hopefully we can talk to you a little bit later down the road and see how it's going when you've gotten a bit further into the course. But how about like the mechanics of how the course works, in terms of you have these different phases of the course? So at this point, if you're in the late hundreds, you'll just be in phase 3 of the course, I believe. And so so there's 5 phases total, but the first phase is basically getting the Hanzi movie method down, and the second phase is learning how to sort of use Anki with vocabulary cards and make connections to the cards there, and then the third is to start to put the words and characters together to create sentences. So how have you been experiencing the mechanics of that, and are you finding that the sequence of the characters and sort of the order in which things are introduced to you, how has that experience been so far?
I think that's like you guys have said before on your show, like that is one of the most kind of unique parts of the method, right? Is the order of the characters. And I thought that was great, going smoothly in terms of adding props over time, adding characters over time to just build on your knowledge of characters and the language. So I think that's great. I hope you guys expand it. I know you guys
working on it.
Talked about expanding, so really excited about that. I think when I first got to reading sentences without pinging, that was awesome. Like you guys say, I thought that just felt really good. It was really cool. In terms of when I'm reviewing sentences, when I'm reading sentences in the Anki cards and stuff, I feel like sometimes I'm unsure of like which sentences to unlock, for example, in my deck. And I think I've gotten, and the whole like, some sentences you guys have multiple closes, so you have multiple cards. I feel I've found personally for me, I used to spend some time to actually look through each close of a given sentence and figure out which one I wanted to choose.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure that was really that valuable for me.
Okay.
So these days what I'm doing is I go through the sentences, I'll read through all the sentences you guys have on the page, and then any sentence that has either that has words used in a way that seems kind of new to me, or a grammatical structure that seems kind of new, I will just unlock the close number 1 for that, and then I won't even look through the other closes just because
Sure.
it just seems like a simpler way. It was getting too complex for me to choose which sentence cards to unlock. And this is actually something that I wanted to maybe bring up. Like, do you guys think that for the people that like the the first the first 100 characters, you guys are very you walk your clients through it and you just hold their hand.
Mm-hmm.
But with unlocking sentences, it's become a lot more complex. And I was wondering did you guys ever think about maybe bolding specific sentences that you guys would recommend, like just unlock, if you don't want to think about, which sentences to unlock, just do these couple, because these are the most important sentences for this.
Well, that is what we do in phases 4 and 5, because in phases 4 and 5, the sentences that are most important are part of a larger text. And so you'll get that in phase 4 and 5, but it might be worth doing that in phase 3. It's a tricky thing to figure out, because on the one hand, we want to make sure that in phase 3, because sentences are kind of the whole, it's like that's the main layer of focus. We kind of want to make sure that if people want to, they can have all of them if they want. But that said, I think that's a good idea, because what we should maybe do is have a track that we give people where we say, all right, this is the track for if you want to get through these sentences as quickly as possible. And we would just say, bear in mind that because of this, you'll only get one sentence per usage of each word. So it is, it's possible you probably needed in the case of a few words, you needed a couple more sentences, but this is like the fast track, and maybe a little bit more speed versus quality, but still, it's like if you did all the sentences, it's probably overkill. So that's a good idea. Maybe we'll do that for phase 3.
The only reason I bring it up really is because I feel like some people would maybe start getting a little bit overwhelmed because there was a point where sometimes you guys have like a dozen sentences for a given word or character. Not it's usually not. I mean, it ranges right from like 2 to 10 maybe. But there was, it's like sometimes I'm like tired at night. I'm just trying to get through a few characters for that day, so I don't have a day where I'm not getting through any characters. And then I come up with a word, and it's like a dozen sentences, and I just feel like it just makes me feel tired to see so many sentences, and like now I have to figure out which card to unlock.
Sure.
And I'm just worried that some clients could possibly get a little overwhelmed with that. I don't know if
that's great feedback. That's great feedback, because I mean, it's hard to say, because one of the things that I did, which was sort of a bit of I look back on it now and I think it was it wasn't the worst thing to do, but I spent too much time in individual sentences, and so I just kind of, and to some degree, I had a little bit of like put my head down and grind it out type of attitude about it, like kind of just do loads of sentences per day. And I wish I had kind of gone into longer texts earlier, because that makes it more interesting. That's obviously, if you have more context, then it's not just a random sentence like she jumped up into the tree and slapped a bird, how rude. And then it's like, in the next sentence is I was eating at my aunt's house, and like there's just no relation between the sentences. So that's something that can get a little bit tiresome, because it feels like, okay, this is sort of random. Oh, there's 10 sentences here. And even though, sure, it's definitely, intellectually it's solidifying your knowledge of the word, I think maybe giving it a fast track, or giving a like, hey, these are really important sentences and these are optional, might be a good idea. And that way we can, and that wouldn't be all that hard for us to do either. We're about to do a bit of an update of all the Anki decks with just some corrections that we've had over the past few months, and just re-upload them. So maybe we'll do that before that re-upload. That's a good piece of feedback.
Great.
Yeah, cool. I know that you said before this call you had a couple of things you want to talk about. Was that one of them, the point about the sentences?
Yeah, I mean, that was just one thing that I thought of in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Did you have any other suggestions for how we could improve the course?
I have noticed that a few sentences, it seems like over half the characters are top-down words, and then it becomes very difficult to read. But I mean, it's not that, it doesn't happen very often. So
that was a thing that sort of I look back on it now, and when we were trying to explain how this works to the people who were writing the sentences, now Annie got it eventually, but some of the early levels, I realized that she must have not totally gotten the concept of what we meant by it, like, the top-down words. And, we explained it to her, and she did eventually get it, but it was one of those things that I got it, that it was confusing for them. They were like, wait, so I can't use some of these words? And, like, they were trying to – it was hard for them to put themselves in the place of a student who doesn't know Chinese, because obviously they know they're incredibly fluent, and not even just fluent, they're teachers and, know the language quite well. So there was a few moments where I even realized that. I was like, oh, we really need to delete the sentence, or not, or at least move it to a later part of the course where and just make it the focus of a different word, because I was like, oh, this sentence is, it's half top-down words. That's not the acquisition zone. You need, if you want to be in the acquisition zone, you want to be like maybe 1 or 2 words that you don't know, not 5. So we'll definitely, I was, one of Annie's tasks at the moment is to go through and figure out where she might have left out some top-down words. And if she did, see, okay, is it too many then? Should we move it later? So we'll definitely do that too, for sure.
There was, I did have another idea. Between 100 and 200 characters, I feel like there's enough, we know enough characters now, the students, that we could start to try to, formulate sentences on our own. So one thing that I was thinking about, like, what if every, 5 characters or so, you had like maybe a little video of you guys maybe like asking us a question or saying something, right? And then you can say, so now try to imagine what you would say in that situation, or even just write it down, and then you can put in the comments, or and then you just basically give at the end of the video, these are some examples of things that you might say as a native speaker in response to the question that we just, I thought that would be really cool.
Yeah. I was thinking, because writing is probably the best form of output. It's funny because you'd think that speaking and listening are kind of the things that people want, which I totally get. But reading and writing are, reading's the most effective input, and writing is the most effective output, just in the sense that with writing, you have a chance to think about what you're saying, and you could never, it's not like you don't have time to think about it when you're speaking, but you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be like, hey, let me try saying that sentence to you again, conversation partner. But when you're writing, you can obviously delete something, write it again. And so I think having some prompts, there's actually like a quiz function in our in the platform that runs the course, and maybe we can find something where we encourage, like, okay, see if you can write a sentence with these 4 characters or whatever, or these 4 words. And that's definitely, I'm not exactly sure how we would be able to grade it. Maybe we could hire a Chinese teacher to help.
You don't have to grade it, right? You can just let people kind of try, at least have the opportunity to start trying.
Start outputting, a little bit of output, because it's like you want to, the input hypothesis is that you definitely want to have as much input as possible, and there's a period of time before you even want to try to output. But I think I agree with you. It's probably around between 100 and 200 characters where you can start, giving it a shot. Like anytime you say anything that is a simple sentence, that's technically output. So yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, we could definitely look into integrating that into the course in some way. We're always in this sort of balance between, like you said, you're looking forward to the expansion of the course, but it's like, we have to expand, but also keep improving based on the feedback. But, we'll find that good balance. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, great. So then I guess fairly important question is, would you recommend Mandarin Blueprint to somebody who's interested in learning Chinese?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, after getting through, even after a couple dozen, I started realizing that this is awesome. And now I feel like, at least for people that are English speakers, I feel like this should be probably the standard in terms of how Mandarin should be learned. Because I can't imagine. I tried the other ways, and it just didn't work out. But now I'm actually. My progress in the past, I think I've only been doing this for like somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks, but I think it's been pretty incredible how much I've been able to acquire now that I'm following your guys' method.
Wow. Well, I can't tell you how I never get tired of hearing that. Not an ego thing. It's just like I'm so happy that it's working for people, because we just knew that this was a better way because we experienced it and we were like, all right, but nobody's really put this together in this way. And so it's so great. Like the more I hear people say how much it's helping them, I just don't know, warms my heart and motivates me to no end. So I really appreciate it. And for anybody who is out there listening to this and you're interested in trying out the course, you can go to mandarinblueprint.com or directly to mandarinblueprint.com/the Mandarin Blueprint method. And we also have the free trial of the course, and I'll make sure all the links for these are in the description for the podcast and, of course, for the YouTube video. So, and Harry, would you like to get back on a call in maybe about 2 months and we can check in on your progress and see, if you have any other feedback and what you think of the later phases?
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, that'd be great, actually. And I'd love to see if, if the whole community thing. You remember that email that about how it would be great to have a community.
Oh, right.
That initiated you guys to start that. So I sent that. I was the one that sent that email.
Oh, right. Yeah.
About that, and it would be great. I was there. I feel like maybe people just need ideas or just things to stimulate conversation in that community. I don't know. I haven't glanced at it in like a week or a few days, but things like, what are some tough characters for you guys, or what have been like some most successful scenes and characters? I think people would be really interested in talking about that. So hopefully the community can pick up and people will start having their own kind of discussions. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. And we've what you're referring to there is it's basically a forum. And I've been, amongst the many other things, thinking about the various sort of forum topics we could set up. And one thing I was thinking that it would be simple is just set up a forum for each level of the course and just and maybe even a sub levels with each character. So if somebody has an issue, they can bring it up to that character and we can make that show up in the main feed. That would be fairly simple to set up. And then we can set up some kind of automation where we ask a certain question each week and try to get people more engaged that way. It's the podcast is so far people seem to be happy with the way we're doing the podcast, that we'll give people video responses to their questions and all of that. But it's certainly I'd like to get more of that community going. And I think that after I get back to China next week or week and a half or so, I'll really hit that hard, because I would like to see more of that as we can as we move forward. Any community engagement is just the most valuable thing to us ever, because we just get a chance to see. I mean, I'm so thrilled, by the way, just how many people are submitting their scenes and submitting their prop suggestions. Like this week alone, we had something like 25 different prop suggestions, and we're cataloging all of them. So we're going to make sure that it's glorious, because we're getting an actual community-based, user-generated set of suggestions. So, and for people who are on the course, when you're looking at any pick a prop lesson or any movies, make a movie lesson, take a look at the comments, because there might just be a few suggestions down there. And it's really cool that that's happening, because that's only going to keep growing as time goes on. So we'll get the forum going well. And so Harry, thanks again. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
One thing that I think would be really cool for other students is that I started applying the Blueprint method to learning other things.
Oh yeah.
So in medicine, for example, I'm taking my board exams, my big exams, pretty soon, and I've realized that there's a bunch of things in medicine that are rote memorization. Like I'll have to remember just numbers 1 through 10 of a molecule. They all do different things, right? And then there's no good way. There are some things that have a lot of context, so it's easy to memorize. But some things are much more difficult to memorize. So I actually started creating Blueprint method scenes for some of these things, which made the memorization actually, I felt much easier. So I think I would suggest anyone listening, anyone that's doing the Blueprint method, if you have things or maybe you're in school, maybe you're in college, or maybe you're not, but maybe you in your day-to-day work, if there's things to memorize, you can actually apply this. And I feel like it took a little bit of creativity, definitely, because I can't apply the same actors and props, obviously, but you can kind of mold it, and you have the skills after doing a few dozen characters, you have the skills to to do that, and it's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of things like that. You know, one of the things you can do when you can become a little bit more advanced in Chinese is because there's so few syllables in the language, the numbers in the language almost always relate to another word. So if I have some digits I need to memorize, like recently I went to an Airbnb in the Delaware Water Gap with a couple of friends, and there was a code to get inside the house, and the code was 0534 or 0534. And I went, okay, Ling. Well, there's a word for that uses the zero, which is Ling Shi, which means like zero food, aka like snack food. It's like chips and popcorn. They call that stuff, that whole category of food, Ling Shi. It's kind of an awesome way to put it. Like, this is no value, zero value food. And so I was imagining a dancing potato chip bag. And why was it dancing? Because the second number is the same as the character in dance. 跳舞. The actual wu means dance. So I was like, okay, there's a dancing bag of chips. And then san for me is always just the Triforce from Legend of Zelda. It's just easy for me to imagine. And then si, the reason why it's the most unlucky number in Chinese, number 4, is because it's so close to si, which means to die. And so what happens is the bag of chips is dancing around, and then Link comes in with the Triforce, and then they all suddenly drop dead. And then I remembered those 4 digits forever. And so, like, there's these things that you can apply, and some of them are unique to Chinese or something, but it's all just the things that first pop into your head, whoever you are, whatever your associations are with things, and it's totally applicable to things beyond Chinese. It's just that, Chinese is one of I would contend that if you want to learn how to get good at memory palaces and mnemonics, Chinese is one of the best Chinese characters are one of the best objects you could possibly pick to get how it all works, because it uses objects and faces and spatial imaging and all of that, and movement and interaction in this way. So maybe people should use the Mandarin Blueprint method just to get good at mnemonics. So.
Yeah, there's so many benefits that I didn't realize.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining the call, Harry, and we'll set up a meeting to talk again in a couple of months, and we'll see how you're doing.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Awesome.